Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Catch the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 7 on this extended show as we take in Ireland against England in the Six Nations, with updates and analysis from Brent Pope and Paddy Wallace later on. But now, time for Football Saturday. Remember our coverage on Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Man United versus Spurs on Saturday Night Football, live only on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106. Tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation as well. Listen on News Talk. Also watch us on the digital and social channels for Off the Ball, for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in your app store to download it if you haven't already. Delighted to be joined on the line by the former Liverpool and Republic of Ireland defender Mark Lawrenson, the football correspondent of the Irish Independent Dan McDonnell's in studio with me here, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward is also on the line to talk about the beautiful game. You can text us 53106 a bit earlier this week because of the rugby 2-4. It's Liverpool 2, Brighton 0 in the Premier League. So goals by Luis Diaz and Mo Salah. Salah with his 20th goal of the Premier League season, clearly the front runner in terms of the Golden Boot. And Johnny, you've been watching this.
Yeah, Liverpool, just phenomenal stuff really, JD. I mean, they've gone to the well so many times this season in terms of the competitions that they're in, fighting on so many fronts, but they still keep performing, and Klopp's kind of, his recruitment is just so good. Diaz, so brave for the goal in the first half. You know, Sanchez absolutely poleaxed him. He was really just wanted to get the ball. It was a long ball, beautiful ball by I think it was Matip, and he got there first. Sanchez came out, sort of put out his legs in a flailing manner. Kind of brought me back a bit to Pickford's tackle on Van Dijk back in the day. It was very dangerous goalkeeping, and sometimes goalkeepers can get away with stuff like that, and he wasn't sent off. And you know, everyone on in the BT studio was arguing that it was a definite red card. It was a very dangerous play, but in any event, Diaz, who was really hit hard in the stomach by sort of Sanchez's legs, he got up and played on again, has been really good in the second half as well. Second goal was a penalty for a handball. That was a penalty. Brighton played quite well in the first half without really threatening too much, and Liverpool now, we're looking at 14 minutes left. They've made a couple of substitutions. Thiago has come on, but they're very much keeping the pressure on, and it's phenomenal, JD. Like, you look at, we talk here about Man United every week, how far back they've been and how long it has been since they've challenged really for a league title, and Liverpool just seem to make it look easy with the signings that they make. And this season, when all hope looked lost, they've clawed it back and they've made it a real title race, and it's been fairly routine here in the second half.
For anybody watching on the digital or social channels, Johnny, you've got this amazing microphone you're carrying.
It looks like he's speaking into a hairdryer.
I was thinking exactly the same thing, and you just stolen my line, Dan.
Sorry,
it's the only hairdryer treatment you're going to get today. Yeah, unfortunately, I got COVID during the week, JD. So I'm at home for the next week or so. Missed the football last night, but I did think during the whole pandemic that we got too used to kind of being on Skype and all that. So I said, if I am on Skype again, I'll try to get a mic that makes it sound a bit better. So thanks to Cork City fan Declan McCormick, he recommended this thing, and I got it probably before inflation made it 100% dearer. But yeah, it sounds all right, I hope.
That sounds fantastic, and I hope you're not doing too badly, Johnny. Lawro, Mo Salah scored again today. A little bit of tension about the deal. Will he sign, will he not? Does he deserve to get what he wants?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes monetary sense to sign if you really think about it. So if they let him go, how much would it cost to get a Mo Salah replacement? The fee, unless it was somebody on a free transfer, but I don't see anybody knocking around that's anything like him on a free transfer in the summer, and his wages. So yeah, I think they've got to do it, to be honest with you. And it looks, it looks like this year it might be a fantastic earning year for the club. Obviously, Carabao Cup winners, possibly win the FA Cup. I would think they'll get to Champions League final. Obviously, full houses for all the league games. So if there's a time to do it, it's arguably now, John.
Have you seen any deficiencies in the Liverpool team? We heard Johnny being so effusive there about their performance against Brighton today. Against Chelsea, they were at times a little bit exposed defensively, playing high, and then Inter Milan, maybe just because Inter Milan are a very good team, they had them on the rack at times in the two legs, although Liverpool came through 2-1. Is there anything you'd be worried about as a Red?
No. I was at the Milan game. I was at the West Ham game. The only thing with the West Ham game was Konaté's positioning was a little bit awry. He's still very much learning the Premier League and playing with Van Dijk, etc. And he was caught out on a few occasions, but that's the only way he's going to learn. I mean, Matip's obviously been outstanding. It sounds like he's created another goal as well today. I mean, the partnership with Van Dijk is very, very good. If you really think about it, John, majority of the time they defend with three, and the three are the two centre backs and Fabinho, because we know where the full backs are. They'll be out on the right and left wing. So. And, I keep saying to you every week, I mean, this is the best they've ever been under Klopp in terms of the quality, in terms of the way they're playing, in terms of also the players, nearly all the players available. I can't think of anyone who's currently not available. And, in the month of March, that's a big, big thing, that. And he can just keep changing the team around. He's done it in the last few games. He's made 3 substitutions after about 60 minutes. They're all desperate to get in the side. No one's upsetting the apple cart. There's no bad dressing room. It's all good. And all they've got to do is just keep playing.
Shane Duffy dropped today, Dan, from the defeat to Newcastle. He started the season well, but recently it's been a little bit more tricky, I think, for him.
Yeah, like he did have a little injury recently that sort of knocked him out. And then, since he's come back in, they've sort of rotated their options a small bit. And he seems to have come in and out. I mean, maybe there's a particular type of game and you're playing a team like Liverpool.
Yeah, they put 5 across the middle today.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose as much as Shane Duffy's had a terrific season, I suppose you might think there might be a type of game where Liverpool's type of a play might expose him. I don't know. I mean, I assume that's possibly some of the rationale behind it. We're sort of seeing him on the bench there behind Graham Potter, but I mean, from where he was a year ago, it's still it's
much better. Yeah,
he wasn't meant to be here really this season, and it still is a really good news Irish story, a really good Premier League story. But yeah, I don't know, no big drama, I don't think.
What's the vibe been like in Merseyside, Lawro, since Kelleher's amazing day in the League Cup final?
Well, it's been good, but the problem is you've kind of forgotten about him now, because it was like, yeah, we've won there, you did really, really well, now go back, you're still number 2. So, which you feel a little bit sorry for him. But, we've had this discussion as well before. Should he go away? Should he go to another club? But just, as I said last time, I don't think that's happening. I think they are quietly pleased with his development. What Klopp's like. He doesn't damn anybody with faint praise, but I think that, they're very happy with that. And they just basically, he's going to be number 2 to Alisson. So the thing, what he has done now is the worry if Alisson gets injured is not quite as bad as it was, say, 6 months, a year ago. Because I'm going to say the kid can play, and I'm amazed. I was stood by the Kop about 2 weeks ago. We were doing a little bit of stuff for LFC TV, and you'd be amazed how tall he is, But he's one of those. And Johnny and the boys will probably know this. Is some players when they're stripped and in their kit look a lot bigger than others, and others look smaller. And Kelleher looks smaller, but I can tell you now, he was like 2 or 3 inches above me. He must be 6'2", 6'3", and I was quietly surprised.
Yeah, I think Dan might talk about the way Stephen Kenny spoke about it midweek, JD. He's talking about, I don't know what the wording he used was, like languid, or like he just looks so relaxed in what he does. And he doesn't, in some respects, he doesn't even look like a goalkeeper. Like when he was a kid, he'd really long golden hair. And now he kind of just looks like one of these lads you might meet at a gig. And he kind of carries that on the pitch. He's so comfortable on the ball. And I don't know, it'll be fascinating to see where he goes. But I thought Kenny's comments were interesting. Dan was obviously at the press conference.
I was trying to call up the specific, the quote. He's laconic. He makes goalkeeping nearly an art form. It's beautiful to watch him aesthetically. Amazing to watch. I don't think I've ever said that about a goalkeeper. Brilliant to watch, such style and composure under pressure. And he does have this sort of style. I can sort of see what Lawro means, like, because he comes into a press conference room even, and he's not especially sort of imposing, but then he gets into a sort of, you see him in football mode, and he is like, he's you kind of wonder, like, because I remember interviewing him years ago, like when he was, I think, in an Ireland under-17 squad, and he had like braces on his teeth, and he was very shy and softly spoken, and you sort of have this question, well, he's a goalkeeper, like how's he going to fill out, and you sort of have that opinion there, and yet he actually is like a sort of terrific athlete now, just in a sort of a deceptive way, like whereas like Bazunu is sort of I mean, you saw Bazunu. Myself and Johnny would have seen Bazunu play at 16, and already he was like a man. You know what I mean, in terms of how he sort of that sort of presence that he has. But it's a great position to be in. I mean, and Kenny, to be fair, was at pains the other day to point out that Mark Travers, who's probably condemned to be the number 3 over the next decade, is arguably having the best season of them all, in terms of, like, he's starring for a team that's likely to get promoted from the Championship. I think he was on course for 5 man of the match of the awards in a row at Bournemouth there, you know. And if Kelleher and Travers, if Kelleher and Bazunu didn't exist, we'd probably be talking about Mark Travers every second week, you know, in terms of what he's doing at club level, relative to, say, other positions. Like, we don't have an Irish striker doing anything like Mark Travers is doing, if you know what I mean, at the top of the Championship.
I think, John,
Yeah, go on.
when I look at him, his upper body, I think he must do loads of weights, because he's started to look like his upper body is bigger and looks a bit more imposing. When I first saw him, I thought he looked a little bit weedy, but obviously, you know, he's grown, as the boys are saying, he's grown, and they will have him on the weights every single day, because the other thing, when you look at Alisson as well, he's, you know, across the shoulders. They're all big and broad, aren't they? So it's only going to help him if he gets stronger upper body wise.
He's got the best of care, isn't he? The best of care, one of the best clubs in the world. This is it. That's why you say, well, don't move. But did Kenny kind of give an indication whether he's going to be the number 1 now?
Oh, I wouldn't. No, I think it was very clear it's still going to be Gavin Bazunu, and I'm not surprised by that at all. You know, I think Kevin Kelleher is a terrific goalkeeper. I really do, but I do think it's recency bias for people to start suggesting maybe he should start playing for Ireland. Like, Gavin Bazunu came in and was like the outstanding player, arguably, of last year, you know, and I think there comes a point where Stephen Kenny is trying to build a settled team, and he has his number 1, and I think it would take Bazunu to have a couple of bad games, I believe,
right,
for that to change. Now, if he has a badly timed injury and Kelleher comes in and does well, I mean, there's these sliding doors moments in anyone's life, you know, and it works out for you, works out against you. I mean, Caoimhín Kelleher was injured for the game in Serbia last March. He would have played, and if Caoimhín Kelleher had played in that game last March, he possibly would have played every game for Ireland since then. Gavin Bazunu would be a lower profile person in terms of, like, the Irish sport and consciousness. But Kelleher was injured at the wrong time, and it may well be in 2 years' time he's still regretting missing that game against Serbia. And it's funny how it works out.
It's still hard to know how good he is as well, because he's not had a proper run, we'll say, of real pressure games.
Or mistakes, and how do you respond to mistakes? Mark Travers, we speaking about there, he had a bad game in an Ireland shirt, didn't he?
In Serbia, like, he had a nightmare, yeah.
When he was in Serbia, like, you had to feel from that night, because, you know, he lost his place afterwards, but, like, it just looked like a guy who kind of it came too early for him, and you can't, as much as international football is a different pressure, you can't marry that performance with, as Dan says, he got man of the match four games in a row in the Championship. The Championship is a serious standard. And then you look at Bazunu, who's, like, stats are just off the charts every week. Whereas with Kelleher, I mean, in the League Cup final, he scored a penalty that he was kind of like he had to take at that stage pretty much, and then watched as his opposition keeper blazed the ball over, and he was kind of the hero. But at the same time, if you analyse it, I speak to people like in the game, I was like, how good is this kid? Because we can all see how good Bazunu is, but with Kelleher, we're only kind of seeing snippets, and as you say, JD, he hasn't been under massive pressure in a 10-game run, we'll say, whereas like the other two keepers very much have. Danny
Welbeck is just forced to say from Alisson in the Brighton-Liverpool game, Liverpool are 2-0 up with 2 minutes of normal time to go. It's Barnsley 1, the leaders Fulham 0 in the Championship. Also breaking news today, Roman Abramovich has been disqualified as a director of Chelsea following the sanctions imposed on the Russian oligarch by the UK government after the invasion of Russia Ukraine by Russia, by Vladimir Putin's Russia.
Well, that's not going to harm him, John, is it?
No, it's not. Is it pie in the sky, lads, to think that there could be a turning point here in football, and we could end up with fans owning clubs, or is it just too much that the horse is bolted when it comes to sport, because you got a 10 billion contract to the Premier League you're selling around the world?
Well, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear sort of, you know, the lads' view on this, and what sort of Lawro's hearing over there. Like, I think, over the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of discussions in here with you or with Joe as this thing has maybe evolved.
Yeah.
And you think, is this a moment? Is this a point in time? Or is this just such one, an isolated incident that, almost like the Super League or something, where people come in, they something gathers momentum, there's a sort of an action taken, and then people just go back to their normal business afterwards.
Watching Chelsea Newcastle tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And what I mean is, it just becomes, well, this is a Chelsea issue rather than what does this say about what the game is. The Super League thing came and went, and then people just went back to their spending and their usual sort of football habits, really. I mean, do you learn anything from this? I don't know. I think if anything, I suppose if you are a supporter of a club, or if you are an executive at a club whose ownership has the potential to come under scrutiny, you now know that it can be fragile. Like, it can become fragile very easily. I still think the people involved with Newcastle there, I would imagine there has to be some degree of unease about the momentum that is growing in terms of the stance that has been taken around Abramovich here. It has the potential to be uncomfortable because, I mean, what will happen? What are Saudi going to get up? I mean, you know the situation in Yemen, but they're obviously, again, if momentum builds up behind a particular act or something that the state is linked with, and that becomes a sort of this sort of momentum of the news cycle almost built, and it feels almost dreadful to talk about what's happening in Ukraine in such a sort of what does this mean for football way, right? It's always in perspective to that. I mean, we're just seeing the pictures, we're seeing the videos. It's absolutely appalling. But and I think we're all very conscious of like the parameters of the discussion around that. But within the confines of the football world, does it make people think, yes, we have sort of backed this horse here, like we are behind, we've taken money from this source, and we celebrate the success that comes with this source, but there is an element of now knowing that there might be a fragility that comes with that, and you have to accept that maybe it might come to an end at some stage. And I don't know, like, I think the Premier League has gone so far down the road in terms of once it accepted Newcastle, well then they're going to, I don't see how they can take a stance other than a retrospective one that again is pushed heavily by government and people for their own
And
needs.
where do you begin, where do you end? Because Manchester City could say, well, we don't like the way the UAE runs their country, or you would have, I feel, lads, sport has preyed on the escapism of people and the fact that people want sport as something to switch off from the day-to-day of their lives, and therefore, as long as the team is winning and we like what we see in the pitch, we don't really want to think about too much what is behind it until it's presented in such a horrific way, like what has happened in Ukraine. Go on, Lawro.
But what it has shown is that this fit and proper person's test is just not worth the paper it's written on, is it? No. It's an absolute joke when you look at it. It is, but for all the wrong reasons as well. And that old turn a blind eye, I'm afraid those days are gone now. So, and the irony of obviously Chelsea playing Newcastle at the weekend is just you couldn't write it, could you?
I always think the fit and proper person's test. I just think that there's something mad about English football in its own way, that you have a sort of a vetting process for, say, who can own a club, or like you see the losses that some of these clubs operate on. It's a slightly different issue. I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago about like Accrington Stanley and as Andy Holt and how things, there's almost like there's such an a la carte approach to rules sometimes, and who can own clubs and what can happen. Like you see the massive losses being racked up by clubs in the Championship. Slightly side issue, right? But it all comes back to the overall broader issue of what stance, like your original question is to do with, say, fan-owned clubs or the 50+1, or like, do you want to apply some kind of really strict conditions to ownership of clubs? And if you do, is that in danger of chipping away at the what we see now, the stunning commercial power, the stunning success of the Premier League, which is why it's now the dominant league in Europe, which can be reflected in the Champions League performances, as we can see. All of these things are interlinked. Yeah. So you can't sort of, and I think that's the thing, is like it's convenient to go, well, Chelsea, Abramovich, this is what's happening at the moment, so let's single in on this. The broader discussion, if you go down the road, I'm not sure if people want to fully embrace that chat.
It's quite sick,
but
JD, sorry, Laura, as Dan says, like, when you talk about the colossal losses that these clubs incur, and like, the problem is it's kind of like the multinationals in Dublin who are, providing great employment, but they're driving up the cost of everything, the cost of houses, the cost of everything, and then everyone else kind of has to get in line or they suffer. So like the clubs that are spending colossal money on wages, they're driving up the price of everything else. So clubs that kind of want to run, reasonably prudently, they have to kind of get in line or they suffer. And then managers get sacked because they're not good enough, despite the fact that it's hard to live with these kind of petro-state clubs. And you look at Newcastle fans, they just seem entirely indifferent to the Saudi takeover. Like they're cheering. There's been a great atmosphere in St James's Park since the takeover. And
because that's all they have. That's why.
That's all. Maybe it is all they have. But at the same time, you're living in the
painting a certain
world,
picture, John. The northeast is like, well, it's all they have up there.
That's what Kevin Keegan said. The people in the south of England go to the theatre. The people in Newcastle go to football matches.
Yeah, but you see, go to a football match. But like, I do think the drive of interest in the League of Ireland is partly as something of a counterculture to what the Premier League has become, and it's stuff like the Abramovich-led Chelsea, the Glazers at Man United, and then like the Saudis at Newcastle and stuff like that, because at least we can relate to these clubs. And Dan did a piece with Philip O'Doherty, the Derry City owner, during the week, but at least it's his hometown club, and he's a complete Derry man through and through. Whereas when you get Abramovich taking over a club that he's no relationship whatsoever in a completely alien country, you're like, well, why would you be doing this? And then if you engage in whataboutery, Abramovich's sins are nothing compared to the Saudi government. So like, it's a fairly sick thing at the top of football at the moment.
Laura, what do you think happens? Like, do you think this actually this leads to any kind of review?
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. If it is, it'll be nothing, will it? I think. But the other thing is, I mean, I think I'm right in saying this. That so there are 20 teams in the Premier League. If you get 14 owners, right, all together, they can move games and do all sorts of things, can't they? If it gets to 14, you could be like this Saturday. So now Liverpool are playing Brighton, or it's just finished, or whatever. That might have been in Asia. I mean, that is a real possibility, and I think, we had the spectre of the Super League and all that, the European Super League and all those kind of things. That they'd love to move. They'd love to move fixtures to Asia. Asia's, I know from Liverpool's point of view, they have millions and millions of supporters in Asia. This could be absolutely mad when you think about it.
Well, the elephant in the room is that the Premier League is the Super League. It is the global league.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
The problem with that is, Laura, then that it's the.
If you still get yeah. I was going to say, if you get 14, they'll go to the Premier League. Right, we're going to change it all. What? I mean, the Premier League can't do anything about it.
It's so globalised now that effectively, ticket sales are becoming less and less relevant. It's the global model, the TV money, the ownership model, and I don't know, like the Premier League's in a difficult place when you look at some of the structures, and the reaction of the Chelsea fans, like, I thought was just absolutely pathetic, like beyond pathetic. I mean, fair enough, you've won things, but like at what cost?
Yeah. Here's me thinking that international football is so pure and so great, and it's the thing we can have refuge in, and then the World Cup is going to Qatar.
Well, see, yeah, where do you go? It's like it's in, like as sort of Lawro says, like that, the 14 out of 20, because I think I was trying to remember where I'd read about that recently. I was just refreshing. It was because there was a talk about like adding a human rights component to like the owner and proper persons, that you could add that to it. But then they have that with Newcastle last year as well. There was a resistance to particular boundaries around sort of sponsorship and stuff, because that's the thing, like, Newcastle and Man City and how they manage to sort of like there are rules that are there, but they're easily circumvented if you have the
and
power.
Also the UK government has got a nice relationship with the Saudi Arabian government at the moment.
Absolutely.
As well,
But they give them arms, don't they?
Yeah, like there's
sell them arms.
Yes, yeah. There's always a deal, but like I think that's the thing. Like there's, Johnny talks about why the Chelsea fans behaved as they did, and okay, they shouldn't have done that, and you'd like to think that there's an awareness of the bigger picture, but I mean, it's just that people have such a singular focus on what it means to them. Like for example, what I'm saying is like people talked about. The Man City ownership this is we have real question marks about this. Yet it didn't stop the other super clubs in the Premier League getting into bed with them when it came to maybe considering the Super League idea, when it came to getting a greater share of overseas TV rights, where it used to be shared by 20, and now they've sort of tailored it towards the top end of the table and prize money. So even the clubs that are, inverted commas, have good owners, and are a little bit more of an acceptable face. When it comes down to it, it's business, and they will align with whoever's with them. If Newcastle are top of the tree, if they actually spend their way all the way up, which looks like it's feasible, they will do it. And in 5-6 years' time, it's every chance. I think it's happened with Man City. There's every chance to say people at Liverpool and Arsenal and whoever it might be will be very happy to go in with Newcastle if suddenly they have an appeal which can grow all their brands together. I mean, that's the reality of it.
It's hard not to be cynical about it. That's why you're always thankful sometimes about the Gaelic Athletic Association, that it has that purity and that amateur status and everything. And
Dan talks about the brand there, JD. Or you talk about the brand, and sadly, that's what it is. It's a brand now. And I do have some sympathy for, your club is your club. You're a Spurs fan since you were a kid, and regardless of what happens. But
at least we're owned by somebody who doesn't want to spend money, but is a nice English gentleman who made his money in the stock market.
But you know what I mean? Spurs are your club, and I know Liverpool fans that thankfully haven't really had that quandary of being taken over
apart from Gillette and Hicks. Now that it's more about their business, the way they ran the business wasn't to the liking of the Liverpool fans.
But that's if you turn it into something that's kind of trying to run something the way Man United run is quite questionable. But when you have something basically just splashing money that's based on oil sales or based on money that was gotten out of the fall of the Soviet Union, basically in the case for Abramovich, and it's just something of a pet, but no real association with that club. It is difficult for fans because football for most of its life has been a working class game with working class players, with local people supporting their local club. Since the Premier League 30 years ago came along in England, that's completely changed. Yet that affinity that you have for your club is still there, and it's difficult to lose that, because you lose part of yourself if you lose your club, and you want to be loyal to your club regardless of what happens. But at the same time, if I were a Man City fan, I genuinely don't think I would have gotten any real kick out of what's happened since the takeover,
Liverpool still has it, Mark. Going to Anfield still is a great experience, and Everton, where do you begin with Everton? But Liverpool does still have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clamour for tickets is amazing, and what they've tried to do as well now, if you don't use your season ticket, the club, I think, are insisting that it goes back into the club, and obviously is sold on somewhere else. So no, they've got it, and they're extremely well run. And FSG they've made a couple of mistakes. Obviously, the European Super League was really, and then the furlough, there's a bit of an issue over the furlough, but generally they've been really, really good. And they've got it, but they've also, recruitment's good. Everything about the club at the moment is really, really good. And when you look at them, they're just extremely well run. They've got an outstanding manager. They've got outstanding players, great support, etc. And they're in a fantastic place at the moment.
And they've won.
Can I ask you about that, Lawro?
They've won 2-0, by the way, against Brighton at full time.
Good. The season ticket thing is intriguing because, ironically, I'd say the couple of times I visited Liverpool, I basically used somebody's season ticket, and this has become a thing where the season ticket is effectively used in a touting mechanism where you pay over the odds for somebody's season ticket. So they've tried to challenge that. Yeah, no,
they're kind of reeling that back in, and the old, your granddad had the ticket however many years ago, and all those kind of things. No, that they're on that, and they're reeling that back in slowly but surely. Yeah, so. Listen, as an ex-player, I can email the girl in charge of tickets. But say I wanted a ticket for, well, I did. I wanted 2 tickets for West Ham, not for me, for somebody else who wanted to go, and I would have needed that. So West Ham was last Saturday, I do believe, yeah. So I would have needed to email Jill Bath, right? Which is her name, 4 months ago, to get those 2 tickets for West Ham. It's mad. Wow. It's mad. Really, really seriously is mad. And yet, the daft thing about it, I could have got half a dozen for the Carabao Cup 2 weeks away from the final. Doesn't make any sense, does it?
We'll remember when they're in the Champions League final, Lawro.
Yeah. But unless the thing about the Carabao Cup, obviously, I got a ticket from my lad. It was 90 quid, so maybe that put quite a few people off the sheer expense. And then, you won't have known this, but if as a Liverpool fan at that game at the Carabao Cup final, you would have had to leave before penalties to get a train back up to Liverpool, which is absolutely ridiculous in the year of 2022.
Boris Johnson's levelling up. 53106. No mention of the American owners. America's got no human rights issues.
To see,
So what about again?
There's a bit of whataboutery with that, but I mean, I would say though, I mean, there's a direct people being from a country as opposed to people being organs of the country or actually being, funded by the state. There is a slight difference there. I mean, I know where people go with that, but I mean, where do you stop with that line of thinking?
53106. Liverpool is still a great club and haven't fallen in the money trap like everybody else. Do me a favour. What about all the houses they bought up and left derelict and the pressure they put on residents to sell so they could expand the ground, please?
Yeah, that is a very fair point. Yeah, and I think the residents around Anfield can attest to that. That actually is true.
53106. Hi lads, love the show. Listen every week. Don't agree with Johnny. I'm a Newcastle fan for years. We're not saying everything is right with Saudi and how they run their government, but what do you expect fans to do? Stop supporting the teams that they have for life. The traditional clubs, United and Liverpool, for example, are hardly perfect either. Well, they're hardly perfect in United's case in terms of the debt that's been put on the back of United, but I think it's a completely different world to what Newcastle and the PIF.
Yeah, and I think my point at the start, what I'm trying to make is like Newcastle fans, I mean, they can roll with it, that's fine, but they have to know that this could stop now. And it's sort of my view with Chelsea fans. I mean, I understand why they're irate, but they also enjoyed winning 2 Champions Leagues and like some of the best days of their lives off the back of money that came from, well, we know where it came from now. Or we know what the motivation behind it was. So they're perfectly entitled to enjoy it, but in the same time, if the carpet's pulled from under them now, that's what happens. And Newcastle, they can roll with it, but I mean, they have to accept it. They can't really jump up and down and complain if for some reason someone pulls the plug on it because of where the money is coming from.
Okay, got to take a break.
Just very quickly, John, Chelsea's wage bill, £33 million a month. Yeah,
I know. They've got actually more money to be able to fulfil matches. I read that today. They've got more money. But Chelsea will be fine. The club will be sold probably to an American billionaire and everything will be fine in the world. We're going to take a break. We're back with Football Chat in a moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Don't miss Spurs versus Man United on Saturday Night Football. Live only on Sky Sports.
And this is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 7 on this extended show. We're bringing you updates and analysis later on Ireland Six Nations game with England. Remember, excuse me, just a technical issue here. Remember, our football coverage and Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Chelsea take on Newcastle United on Super Sunday Live, only on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation as well, so you can watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. We're joined by Lawro, the former Republic of Ireland and Liverpool defender, Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent in studio, and also Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, to talk about the beautiful game. Liverpool 2, Brighton 0 is the result. Luis Diaz with the first goal, and then Mo Salah from the penalty spot. Salah's 20th Premier League goal of the season. Liverpool within 3 points now of Manchester City at the top. In the Championship, it has ended. Barnsley won. The leaders Fulham won. A 20-1 Irish winner of the Imperial Cup at Sandown. Surprise package trained by Peter Fahey, ridden by James Bowen.
Hosed up, John.
Is that your Cheltenham pocket money?
I wish it was. No, surprise package is very well named because he was a big enough surprise at 20-1. Maybe it shouldn't have been as the only Irish horse in the race.
Sligo go very well for next week for the British, does it?
Sligo Rovers won DLR. Sorry, I'm going to start that again. DLR Waves won. Sligo Rovers nil. So DLR Waves leading at the showgrounds in the Women's National League. That is in the first half. Lawro, are you going to have a punt next week?
Say again, John.
Are you going to have a punt next week?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have. I'm not particularly up on it. I just sit glued to the telly. I used to go quite often.
Did you go when you were a player in the 80s?
Nah. We'd always, if I remember, it always seemed to be a European week. So we never seemed to make it. No, never ever.
Would you go to Chester? Would that be the Liverpool players' day out? Would that have been the Chester races?
The Grand National.
Oh well, yeah, obviously.
Up to no good at that.
Did they get you off on a Saturday though for that though? Did Liverpool get off on the Saturday for the National?
Well, I tell you what happened. Ourselves and Everton took it in turns to play at home on the Saturday of the Grand National, but we kicked off, I think, at 11 o'clock or half 11, something like that.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The proper football back then.
Yeah.
Proper football, yeah. And I remember this is the only thing that Sir Kenny ever gave me, right? So we'd won in the morning. We had hospitality, etc. at Grand National, and we all got a little bit of you know what. And our gardens used to back onto each other in Southport. When he got out of the car, he honked all the way up my drive. Seriously, he honked all the way up my drive, and I said, "It's the only thing you've ever given me." And he said, "Oh, I think it must have been something I've ate."
We got to get him on for the second half to refute or otherwise that story.
Yeah.
It is mad. The rugby documentary that was on recently about the 1980s, and like Lawro can relate to the era. Like, so when Ireland won the Triple Crown in '82, they're playing France a month later, and because it was a month later, they basically just went on the piss for 3 weeks, and they were saying like, we probably would have won the Grand Slam, but I don't know, like it was a long wait, and the country was going a bit mad, and they went over to Paris and they couldn't produce it anymore, and then Mick Doyle took over, and they were due to play England in the first game in 1985, and it was called off because of snow. And one of the northern players in the team, he put us through one of the game was called off, but he put us through one of the toughest sessions like we've ever had under him. We went to O'Donoghue's for the day, and it was just like, it was a totally different era. But you're looking back and you're saying like, Cloughy used to have them having pints the night before, like, cup finals and all.
Did you have a strict?
Those are the days, boys.
Did you have strict drink bans, Lawro, before big matches in the Liverpool glory era?
We didn't drink. Say we played Saturday, we didn't do Thursday, Friday. No, we didn't. No, we seriously did. We didn't. And the other problem was with Sir Kenny again. The lads who lived in Southport, about 6, 7 or 8 of us. He knew if we'd been out. He knew if we'd just been out for tea on a Thursday afternoon before a Saturday, and he'd quiz you. And he'd go, "Well, yeah, but I just went to the Italian. I didn't have a drink." And he just said, "You should be at home." And oh yeah, sorry about that.
Did he change, Lawro, when he became player manager? Did he have to put distance between himself and everybody else then?
Yeah. I got the first bollock in, because he took over after Heysel, didn't he?
Yeah.
Of which they're making a 6-part drama about, because I was filming the other day with him, which was going to be really, really interesting. Do you know at Liverpool there's only one little plaque that says anything about Heysel? It's amazing, isn't it? Really is. Anyway,
it changed the course of football to such a degree as well.
Yeah,
you were in hospital. You ended up in hospital that night.
With a garden, with a arm guard and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but so what was I saying about Kenny then? I can't even remember now.
Yeah, him changing when he became a manager.
Yeah. So what happened was after Heysel, I dislocated my shoulder yet again, so I had an op, so I wasn't going to be ready for the start of the season, and I couldn't even really run around with them. So I didn't turn up the first day, thinking it was fine, and I came coaching in Dublin. Who was the guy, the Indian guy who had the Miss World contest? It was a massive Tottenham fan. You'll know, John, no?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I just can't remember his name.
Krish Naidu.
Yes. Yeah.
Remember him? Remember Krish?
Yeah.
And so if you come over, do a little bit of coaching, and also I was getting a few quid and stuff. And anyway, my better half managed to get hold of me later in the day, and she went, "He's going absolutely nuts. You need to ring him." This is Kenny. Of course, no mobile phones or anything. But I didn't ring him. I got home and I turned up early the next day, not for training, just at the training ground, and he slaughtered me. "Where were you? Where were you? I was wanting to talk to everybody." I said, "I can't do anything. I can't run." I said, the surgeon said, like, keep away from it and all that. He said, you should have effing well. Oh, he gave it to me big style. But hey, I forgave him.
You wonder what was going on inside the dressing room, lads, the other night after the PSG Real game in the Paris dressing room.
Well, apparently
it
was outside the dressing room as well, with Leonardo and the owner sort of effectively going into the referee's room about Donnarumma and the foul or otherwise. This was a strange, and I know we're talking about like club structures, and it's not like Real Madrid they're in massive debt themselves, but I got some kick out of that. One, on the level of the failure at PSG, but like Modric and Benzema at their combined age to be that instrumental it was really a fight against the passage of time. It was amazing second half to watch, and Benzema and Modric I thought were just off the charts.
Should United now think twice, Lawro, about Pochettino if he was on the top of the list after what happened the other night, because that was a capitulation?
Well, the only problem is I think the owner dictates that they play 1-7-3, doesn't he? I mean, if you know, he's forever naming the substitutes about players who aren't playing and all that kind. So probably no. I think while it looks like it's a great job, I don't think it is a great job. And you know, if your front three don't run back and chase anybody, what's all that about? I mean, that really is just like a toy for the guy who owns it. And I get why people go because they're on fortunes, etc. But I also get why they leave really, really quickly. I think the selection of the manager is the last thing that happens at that football club, which is ridiculous.
It's funny that Carlo Ancelotti, I had this tweet, a bit of a joke the other night, that he's in cinemas now starring in Escape from Everton, Lawro. Remarkable that he's ended up at Real Madrid and going great guns again there.
And probably got paid off at Everton as well, by the way.
Yeah. It will probably push Mbappe out the door now, I'd say.
Probably what, sorry?
Push Mbappe out the door. He'll probably leave now.
Oh, he's leaving anyway, isn't he? Isn't he going to Madrid?
There was talk, though, that he might stay, that they might try and make him, give him, I don't know, $1 million a week or something like that.
I just think, it does seem like one of those that, I mean, they don't really announce pre-contract stuff in football too much, do they? Like, it's just not the done thing, but it does seem like he's going there, and he is headed that way. I'd agree with Laura and Pochettino thing, by the way. I think now, I mean, he obviously still, like, he took the job. He probably, I mean, did he know that going in? I'm sure he did.
He's a former player, so there's loyalty there as well.
He knows the gig. He knows the gig to some degree. Maybe it's a small bit damaging, but I don't know if it's damaging enough to stop, say, Manchester United hiring him. I'm not sure if that would be their consideration.
Right.
It won't stop that.
We saw Benzema and Lewandowski as well, natural finishers in the game, number 9s, which we sometimes feel is a bit of a dying breed, especially the way Harry Kane plays the game right now. Who was the most natural finisher you ever played with or against, Lawro, as a defender, or even in your second life as a commentator saw?
Oh, crikey. Well, Russia was natural, the most natural. But you know what? At Liverpool, all the players who've ever played with him would give you Robbie Fowler. And apparently on his first day when he turned up training with England and they put a kind of a shooting session on, everybody just stopped and watched because everything he hit just went in the corners, everywhere, high, low, you name it. He was up there. I mean, Kenny was a great finisher, but he just never got the opportunity to score that many goals. But Lineker was a good finisher, wasn't he? It wasn't difficult to play against, but he was just an out-and-out finisher. In fact, he wasn't bothered about the game. He just wanted to score and have chances. But there's loads of them, John, isn't there? There's been loads and loads of them.
So the most difficult then forward you had to play against, was there somebody you was an absolute nightmare to play against?
I didn't like the battering that you used to get. I didn't like that physical, the bloody Mick Harfords, Andy Lockhead, Joe Jordan, where basically, you know, the ball would be coming in the box and you'd be favourite to head it. And you knew as soon as you headed it, they used to head you. And it wasn't good. They were the worst one. And that was the only time when Hansen used to speak to me going, yours, not mine. So that was the... Oh, and it was the other one, Billy, the guy who played for Oxford. Billy Whitehurst. Wow. Have I never told you that story?
No, go for it. Come on.
I'll go very, very quickly. So we go to play away at Oxford, and I knew about Billy Whitehurst. He'd signed him from Hull, and he was like, I wouldn't say he was a thug. Might get in trouble, but he was, right. And he was just he used to batter players.
Well,
so
that just covers all bases, Laura.
Yeah, we're sat in the dressing room. And Al's looking at the team sheet and it's Oxford and we don't know that much about him. And he went, "Who's the number 9, Billy Whitehurst?" I went, "Al, honestly, just like, you know, if you can have nothing to do with him because he's going to batter the pair of us." And he went, "Oh, right, okay." Anyway, so the game's about to start and everything, and Oxford have got a kick-off. Langie's playing, Dave Langen's playing right back, and I said to Al, just be careful. So they got the kick-off and knocked it back to Lange. Lange was a really good pinger of the ball, and he pinged this ball. And Billy Whitehurst had started on the left wing and ran in towards the penalty area to come and challenge for this ball. And thankfully for me, Hansen was on that side. And how clever Hansen was. And as they both were going in for the ball, Al just stepped back. And as he stepped back, Billy had launched himself literally in the air to do Hansen. And Hansen just like sort of swerved his body, never got touched. Billy collapsed, did all his back in, And then on the way out, Hansen happened to see that across Billy's nose was a series of staples. He'd crashed his car into a fence on the Thursday night before the game. And I said, "You do not know how lucky you are." And he went, looks a bit rough, doesn't he? Oh, my God, yeah. He battered loads of people, Billy White.
Well, you can say maybe he engaged in thuggish behaviour at times, so I don't think you can call him a thug, Lawro, to be honest.
No.
It's Italy 3, Scotland 5 in the Six Nations. So Ireland taking on England at Twickenham from 4:45. We've got Brent Pope in studio.
Italy have gotten a try, by the way, JD, since. So it's back to 2. It's actually quite an engaging game on here in the corner.
Yeah, so it's Italy taking on. Yeah, it's 12-10 now that Scotland lead Italy in the Six Nations. We also have Brighton and Liverpool 2 result from the Premier League, with Luis Diaz scoring the first goal, and also the second goal then coming from Mo Salah, his 20th of the Premier League season. Brentford against Burnley at 3:00 start. Manchester United against Spurs kicks off at 5:30. We'll talk about that after 3:00. I just want to let you know as well about a special charity auction to raise some funds for the Red Cross in Ukraine. You can own a slice of football history. Help a great cause as well by bidding for a one-off version of the new Irish football jersey with the match details of the likely to be rearranged Ireland-Ukraine clash, which was scheduled for June. That's one of the first ever prints of the jersey with those unique details. Has been auctioned by Irish shirt designer Jonathan Courtney. Full details can be found at Johnny Courtney on Twitter, with the auction currently at €500. So check that out, please. We're back with Football Saturday. Lawro, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward between 3 and 4. Stephen Kenny's new deal, Shamrock Rovers against Bohemians last night, and a preview of Manchester United against Spurs, all coming up. Don't go away. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Football Saturday between now and 4, because we're on air till 7 with the Six Nations coverage of Ireland, England. Brent Pope and Paddy Wallace will be joining us later on. But at the moment, football on Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We're streaming the conversation. Listen on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Delighted to be joined on the line by Mark Lawrenson, the former Republic of Ireland and Liverpool defender. Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, and in studio with me as well, Dan McDonnell. Stephen Kenny, Dan, signed a new deal during the week. We all expected that to happen until the Euros 2024. Anything unusual in the deal? Anything? Is there exit clauses? Can they?
I think, to be fair, I think as far as some of the details have been kept, I think, reasonably tight. I think it is fair to say, I think it's been acknowledged that part of the, I think it was Jonathan Hill phrased it, the FAI CEO, the toing and the froing of the negotiations, I think was related to, I suppose, an exit point. From what I understand, I think, from probably Stephen Kenny's sort of side of things and his people or whatever, I suppose there would have been maybe a little bit of a wariness around having some kind of, agreed sort of severance figure in there, whereby if the Nations League was sort of middling, that it would be very easy to dispense with them, if you know what I mean, in such a way that effectively the Nations League, the contract didn't change too much, that we'd actually still be. And of course, the Irish manager is possibly always 3 or 4 bad results away from their position being discussed, no matter what contract they have. But I think they wanted there was a feeling that the contract this time needed to give them a degree of security around planning towards qualifying for the Euros, which is what matters, rather than almost being, because he's not highly paid relative to previous Ireland managers. It's still a very good salary compared to anyone in the world, around sort of 550,000 euros a year. But, Martin O'Neill was on 2 million quid or whatever, Trapattoni would have been on that money. So, severance deals with them were complicated. Obviously, Kenny, you're talking smaller percentages. But in saying that, I think they're probably trying to get away from the situation where this ongoing referendum on his position. So from what Jonathan Hill phrased, that I think they reached a point that they're both comfortable with. And my understanding of that would be, if the FA were to decide for some reason let's just say Nations League went really, really badly, and I hope it doesn't happen.
Does it matter if it does?
Think it happen. Well, I mean, it always it's a weird place to start. I mean, doesn't matter. It has implications maybe in terms of there might be change, and I'm not going to end the rabbit hole. There might be change in how they do some of the seasons and rankings, the UEFA sort of rankings that they used to do. But I mean, if you get turned over 4 or 5-0 by someone, you know what the noise is going to be. So whatever discussion you have about where things are going, of course the Nations League really, really matters, because every game has a degree of importance. But I suppose my point is, if Ireland have a sort of an okay Nations League, they sort of win a couple of games, lose a couple of games, they don't end up top in the group, but they end up in sort of a bit of a no man's land. That Stephen Kenny doesn't have this thing hanging over them where they've put in some type of easy clause that he can just be, actually we're going to change things up here and go with someone else for the Euros. I think it needs to be exceptional circumstances that would force a change. Now my broader opinion on this is that I would have been writing about this during the week, and when we discuss Stephen Kenny, you'll get texts in of people saying, here we go, Kenny propaganda, or
Kenny FM is my favourite
Kenny
one.
FM, or you'll have the people who are very supportive of what he's doing. I think, given him the Euros campaign, it gives us the opportunity to find out once and for all. I always felt, I think you cannot assess Kenny's early tenure without acknowledging COVID, without acknowledging empty stadiums, without acknowledging the fact that, from what I gather, the camps were a little bit miserable because there was no real facility or ability to sort of mix and bond in the way that they would. He changed a lot of staff, which was contentious, but as a result, those new staff come in. It was probably even overemphasised by the fact that they couldn't mingle, even right down to the security rented hotel, which I don't think was his change, but there was just a feeling of unfamiliarity. Now, he overcame that. By all accounts, the training camp in Spain last year was quite good, very positive, and since then I don't think anyone can argue there's been an upturn in results, albeit from a low base, but still an upturn in results. I think if somehow the plug had been pulled after the end of the game in Luxembourg where they won 3-0, I think no matter, over the next coming years, there would have been that what if sense there of why did you change that when you've given him that time. Now, to be fair, I don't think Kenny could say he hasn't been given the chance. I think he's been given a fair bit of patience, and now he gets the time to go and a full campaign, a full crack to bring Ireland to the Euros, which I think is the tournament that you should expect to qualify for. I think, reasonably, with the 24 team renewal. I think that's a fair demand, and he's not daft. I'm sure he would know if Ireland don't qualify for the Euros in Germany, I don't think there's going to be a contract renewal then, but in saying that now, I don't think he's not going to be like one of these people. I suppose, maybe someone like Brian Kerr would have felt he was let go too early. He didn't get the chance. He was replaced before maybe he got the chance to see it all out. I think Kenny's going to get his full crack now, and come what may. And I think, all things considered, I think it's fair enough that he gets that shot, and then we will have our answer now.
To let you know, folks, it's Scotland 19, Italy 10 in the Six Nations. In the Women's National League, Sligo Rovers 0, DLR Waves 1 at the Showgrounds. And in the Gaelic Football Allianz Division 3, Antrim 1-8, Longford 2 points. Lawro, when Republic of Ireland even kind of comes up in the psyche over there in England, are we just in the same bracket as Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland? Are we just seen in that bracket now?
No, we're probably lower.
Right.
In all honesty, looking at the results that we've had, I know we've had an improvement, etc. No, but probably lower. And even in days gone by where you might have said that our football wasn't particularly good or attractive, I think everybody looked upon a fixture playing against us as always very, very difficult, because we were really strong and difficult to beat. But no, I think probably lower at the moment. And just obviously listening there to Dan and stuff, I think that there'll be stages in this contract where there'll be X guaranteed in terms of if they decide to get rid of him. I think that's in finding all the Premier League now, with one of the first things they do if you go after a new manager is that there's an agreement for the severance pay, and so everybody knows exactly where they are. And I would think that's just common sense at the moment as well. But no, I think people just look at results. They don't necessarily watch the Republic play across the water, but they look at results and go, can't score, can't win, and generally be written off, I would say.
Anthony Barry's replacement's very important, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah, I think Kenny's probably keen enough to play that down. I think maybe that Anthony Barry, I think it was quite pointed that Dan was actually there, but it was quite pointed that he seemed to imply that the three at the back kind of came out of the England game rather than necessarily a brainchild from Anthony Barry. That seemed to be the implication during the week where he was talking about the England game and not about video game, but the England game itself. But no, I think Anthony Barry's replacement will be important, and it is kind of mad to think that Kenny is on 10 grand a week, and for me that seems huge amount of money, particularly in the context of an organisation that had to be bailed out by the government. And then to think that his predecessors were on multiples of that just goes to show how dysfunctional the game was. And I think with Kenny, we had a piece during the week with Jim Crawford on our podcast, and we spoke about kind of the pyramid system with all the coaches from Kenny down, we'll say, to Jason Donoghue, who's the 15s coach, and all the way down, and some sort of cohesion there. And when you think we brought in these managers who were probably past their best in some respects and didn't really seem to care what sort of football we played as long as it got results and helped qualify us for tournaments, and probably didn't have a massive kind of say in the structure of football in this country. We still have Ruud Dotker's replacement to go in, which is massively important. But I think I'd be very positive, JD. I think you look at some of the players that he would have even name-checked, the likes of Festia Vasile this week, who's going to come into the under-21s and isn't even in the squad yet. You've players like him who could be very exciting. Some of the, even Obafemi's playing really well for Swansea, and he hasn't gotten much of a look in for Ireland. There are players that will kind of come onto the scene, and I think the players in general are very happy, and there has been buy-in from the people who want to watch Ireland. And another interesting point he made was that, which again I actually think is very debatable really, he said there aren't really League of Ireland fans, it's kind of like football fans are not, and he's because the League of Ireland doesn't have much traction in this country, but he seems to kind of want to encourage this idea of the football family. And it's not as if people like Stephen Kenny because they're League of Ireland people. I think people like Stephen Kenny because they were thoroughly fed up with the way we were playing football. It was horrible to watch. We were looked down upon, I'd say, all across Europe and the world as a team that just had a lot of spirit but didn't have any technical quality. And I think he wants to change that, and I think that's what he's trying to say in terms of fans. Fans are buying into Ireland, not because they're League of Ireland fans, but because they enjoy the way we play.
And to that end, Dan, there was an unusual situation that occurred during the week, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, no. So we had the press conference on Thursday, which was to it's to do with the contract. So it was as with all these things, it's broken into stages of TV and radio and print or whatever. So before the daily newspaper section, we were summoned. There was a big long delay. It was maybe 40 minutes over, and we were summoned down the corridor, invited into the FAI's tactical analysis room in Abbottstown, where Stephen Kenny decided that he wanted to give a little bit of a mini presentation. So we were sort of brought in. We were sat down in chairs, maybe. I don't know how many was in the room, sort of 12, 15, 20 maybe. Ger Dunn, who's the FAI's head of analysis, was sitting there on a laptop. There was boards, we could see what was on the walls there and stuff. Ireland play Lithuania in a friendly after the Belgium game, and they're clearly having a meeting about that because they had all Lithuania's formations over the last year up on a wall on a sheet. And Stephen Kenny proceeded to sort of talk over a series of clips from all the games in 2021. It was not expected, and I was sort of chatting to people after, maybe around the FAI, who said that he'd always wanted to maybe try and do something like this, but maybe there was a sense that if the contract thing was up in the air, it just might have seemed a little bit. I don't know.
Why do you think he did it?
I don't know. I kind of listen. I was writing about this yesterday. I mean, people can just look at it and say, "Oh, this is just a PR thing, just to to get people on side." Is it maybe a reaction to maybe to suggest that you don't understand what we're trying to do here? Because he sort of, it was a series of attacking. Some of it just was a bit. It was just clips of movements in games, but some of it was quite interesting as well in terms of just explaining maybe some of the movements between the wing backs and the attackers in the system. You could have got something from it, but it wasn't like a big Bielsa. I know Bielsa had done something before where it was massively detailed presentation, from what I recall. It went on for was it 90 minutes or something? I seem to vaguely recall some story around that.
That was the Derby thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was how they played. Yeah, was it how they played and all this or something? Yeah. It was a little bit more general than that, a little bit more sort of entry level stuff. I don't really know what the thinking behind it was, and you'd have to ask Stephen Kenny what's thinking behind it. But maybe he feels that, do some critics, and there would have been people in the room maybe who would have maybe been critical of him, and people who would have been maybe not critical, quite supportive of what he's trying to do, maybe trying to make a point of, well, here's some of the things that we're trying to do in games. There was, clips from the Portugal match, how they targeted an area behind Cancelo in that game, why with the back three they sometimes risk going like 2v2 defending, and maybe just trying to point people. And I found it quite interesting, I have to say. But at the same time, also with the cynical journalist hat on, also being aware of how, in a way, it was a slightly eccentric thing to do, But this is.
Did you learn anything from it?
He's got to have it. Yeah.
I did learn a couple. I mean, I think there was little bits you would picked up from it that I think if you have your sort of your eyes on it, you may be watching Ireland games in future. There should be little things you should be looking out for. But he didn't give us. It wasn't like a mad tutorial about. There was a goal against Andorra that they conceded, and I think there was a question. Well, why? Who was marking that guy or something? And he was like, well, no, we actually defend zonal from. Long free kicks in the box. We go man to man from corners. He had this thing about the lanes. There was a tactics board, an 11v11 tactics board laid up, like one of those magnetic ones, and they had the pitch. They had it divided into lanes like a swimming pool, a competitive swimming pool. And he was pointing out that when James McLean, say, is left wing back, and I don't know, Aaron Connolly is left sided of the front three, that they're neither one of them is meant to be in the same lane at the same time. And then there was a little clip, showing how, the inverted wing back sort of works, and how it has worked at times. So there was a little bit of stuff like that, but it wasn't like a massively detailed thing. He did it. The presentation that was shown, he said that it had been given to the underage coaches earlier that day. I think they had a meeting in the same room with some of the underage coaches, and I think he basically looked at his audience and decided he wasn't going to give some of the technical information that he was given to them. But I don't know. I know that it wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. I can imagine other people within football looking at this and going, what's he doing that for? This isn't the thing to do. I don't know. I don't know what you make of it, Lawro. I'm not sure what you think about that sort of approach.
Well, no, but I think in the Premier League now, they have that all week. The players. I think I've said to you before that many years ago when you played, you just played, and while you thought about the game, you didn't necessarily think about everyone else in the game, in your team. Where they should have been, different times and all that kind of thing. But now, and you'd sit in the stand and you'd watch a game, and you suddenly look and think, wow, what a difference that is. In fact, they used to make us do that at Liverpool. If you're injured, sit quite high in the stand and you could watch the overall thing, and you maybe sort of saw somebody playing your position and thought, oh, right, okay, that's all right. I've never really thought about, and all those kind of things. But they have this at half time in games. But it's interesting. I mean, look, you can have all the tactics in the world, can't you? But it's all about players. I mean, look at Paris Saint-Germain the other night. If you haven't got the right players at the right time, it don't really matter if you're the most tactically astute team in the world, does it?
Or Man United downing tools last week.
But I think the point is, sorry to cut across you, Johnny. The criticism of Martin O'Neill's Ireland would have been, and you would have heard this coming out from players towards the end, and it maybe ties in a little bit with what Lawro was saying there, that maybe a younger generation of players who are now used and conditioned to getting loads of information like this at their clubs, that Martin O'Neill's style, which maybe would have been less information given like that. I'm not saying they did nothing or whatever, but you did hear stories of players who maybe would go out onto the pitch and wouldn't have been 100% sure from the role. Now, I sense from Martin O'Neill and maybe Roy Keane's side, they felt that these players they shouldn't need that, and there was sort of a generational thing maybe there that came towards the end. Stephen Kenny's style is very much, it's going to be, we're going to give the players this information, and we're going to go heavy on this information, and this is our way of doing things. Mick McCarthy was probably somewhere in the middle, I think, to be fair. I don't think there would have been complaints about Mick McCarthy's match preparation. I don't think you would have heard it coming out about Martin O'Neill's towards the end.
Apart from penalties at the World Cup, go on.
Well, sorry, yeah, but I think you would have heard at the end maybe players thinking they needed a little bit more, because whether people like it or not, the players that are coming through now, this is what they are getting from the start.
Yeah, and I understand all that. I found it strange. Why would he need to do this in front of the press? Because is there a degree of I wasn't there? Is he trying to justify himself? It seems a bit odd to me. You don't need to tell the press what you're doing.
I would argue that I think there's so much going on in coaching now that Dan alluded to there, and I think if anyone takes on, like, it's something I thought about doing, like just getting the smallest coaching badge you can get. Just do the coaching course to learn something from that style of the game. And if you talk to ex-players, they'll say, like, you get all types of people doing them. Like, it just helps to get that coaching badge. But there's an awful lot going on in terms of tactics and stuff that I don't think journalists really see, and I don't think they just don't have the time to take in that information. So I wouldn't really be cynical about it. Like, I think Kenny's a decent man. I've always thought that about him, and like, for a lot of the journalists who were on the League of Ireland beat and would have known him quite well from that time, like, and would have kind of backed him to get the job. You are always conscious of the fact that, like, you know, personally, I really like Stephen Kenny. I think he's a very good man, but obviously you want to call him out if things are going wrong. But ultimately, Dan, surely at the end of, like, this video conference, he's got to show you the video gate. He's got to show you that video. I would have been like, Stephen, that's grand, but show us the video for a bit of crack here, and then we'll be all over you.
Well, that's it. Like, I mean, we're sitting there watching a video of, like, tactics, and his basic point
I want to see the Easter Rising.
Well, I think his basic point was that, and I think, Johnny, you alluded to it, but I was just thinking listeners may not be aware of it. The most passionate he probably got in the meeting was talking about how that friendly against England at Wembley, where in the last 15 minutes they were sort of in a low block camped at the edge of the box, and he said, you know, he resolved after that they'd never ever play like that again, that this was obviously a real low point for him. And while that Wembley game was overshadowed by the whole video thing and the furore, the impression we were left from Kenny's side is that it was the game and how they were so comprehensively second best, and that led him to think about maybe changing the system round to suit the players that they have. But listen, this is, I mean, I would say, you know, this is sort of his personality as well too. Like, Johnny references, I spoke to Philip O'Doherty, who's the Derry City chairman. He's the billionaire now, who's the chairman of Derry, and he spoke about Stephen Kenny because the first time he came into football, the first manager he worked with was Stephen Kenny, and he actually made the point every conversation was about football. Like, there was never any small talk. As much as Kenny is, like, has political opinions and stuff, he was just 100% focused. And he is, like, some managers are comfortable, like, on the after dinner circuit telling stories about, you know, the way, you know, their playing days,
or Lawro.
Sorry, no, I'm not saying that, making that point, but, like, Stephen Kenny doesn't, he's not that type of, that's not his background.
That's the one part of the piece I didn't agree with Philip on that, because of all the managers I know, like, and if you speak to people who know Rafa Benitez, like, Rafa Benitez apparently will talk to, like, the man in the street corner, he'll talk to the wino, he'll talk to anyone as long as it's about football, and he doesn't really have anything else to offer. But from my experience, Stephen Kenny, I mean, he's written match programme notes, as Dan kind of alluded there. He's very interested in politics. He's a lot more interested apart from football, which is one of the things that Philip said that I thought was actually kind of wrong, because
maybe when he's talking to the chairman, he doesn't. Yeah. He has a different focus in his mind,
especially
Johnny.
in Derry.
Yeah.
I remember reading that Arsene Wenger used to watch old German league games in his spare time.
Well, some of the managers.
But Kenny's big into watching other sports as well too. Actually, that's the one thing I would say is he's big into watching other sports. He sort of has his own. This is again, you hire someone, you hire their personality. There's always been this big thing about Kenny, he needs to be more polished in front of the media and do this and that. I was sort of like, no, you've hired him to be what he is. He's 50 years of age. Like, you know, you take it for what it is.
It's all about results.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Nothing else matters.
It's completely all-consuming, though. It's just all-consuming. And, like, I was even texting Ian Ryan earlier. He's the Wexford manager, and I think they might have a game off on Monday, and he's saying, we're going training, and then I'm driving to watch, like, Longford and Bray or something like that. And I was like, if you're Ian Ryan has young kids, and, like, he's also a teacher and he's the manager of the League of Ireland, like, these people are absolutely infatuated. Ollie Horgan goes to about 800 matches a year. Like, it's just insane. That's all they think about, a lot of these managers.
And all we think about is Cheltenham form. Scotland 24, Italy 10 in the Six Nations now. Another try for Scotland. Liverpool won earlier on 2-0 away to Brighton. Barnsley 1, Fulham 1, a result from the Championship. Brentford 0, Burnley 0 is the latest in the Premier League. Man United against Spurs at 5:30. We'll look ahead to that shortly. Our latest scores in the Championship: Birmingham 0, Hull 0, Blackburn 0, Bristol City 0, Blackpool 1, Swansea 0. It is Bournemouth 0, Derby 0. Also goalless between Cardiff and your boys, Lawro Preston. Coventry 1, Sheffield United 1 is the latest score. Millwall 0, Middlesbrough 0. And Nottingham Forest 1, Reading 0 is the latest. And Peterborough 0, Stoke 0 is the latest score. I spoke about Bielsa there. Lawro, was it wrong for Leeds to get rid of him now?
Oh, really good question. Arguably, yeah. Because I think, look, once the likes of Phillips and Bamford, I think Bamford might even play, might he, tomorrow. Once they were back, they're a completely different team, to be honest with you. And yeah, I thought they might have just kept him on and I think, those two players would arguably get into nearly everyone else's team in the Premier League. And I think that was, I think it was unlucky. And already this guy's coming. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure what he said about the other night against Villa as well. They didn't carry out my orders. They didn't do this and they didn't do that. And it's only his second game, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not being funny. You can lose players really, really quickly nowadays. And it'll be interesting to see. I'll be more worried about Leeds now with this guy, Marsh, than I would have been with Bielsa, because, as I say, I think, Bamford and Phillips back, I think it would make a difference and they would win enough games. And the other thing is probably as well is the three bottom teams at the moment looks like they may finish, the three bottom teams.
Well, Burnley have got a bit of fight about them. I suppose that's the one thing you can say. I think Norwich and Watford are going down. But Everton, Mark, as well, they're definitely not safe. And defensively, the other night, they were all over the shop.
John, all season, they've been poor defensively, and they're gambling on the fact they've got majority of the games left at home. But dear old Seamus Coleman has been an absolutely outstanding player for club and country, and his legs have gone, I'm afraid. And looking at Pickford, who obviously thinks he's better than he is, Michael Keane, he's just got a mistake in him every single game. Holgate, who thinks he's a better player than he is as well, and they are in an absolute total mess, but they'll probably scrape through by virtue of the home games and, as I said, the three at the bottom.
And also,
you do wonder though, what credentials does Lampard have to get them through a situation like this, where they are obviously crisis of confidence, and they're not used to this at all, these players.
Well, I think it was interesting though, and Laura referenced the Jesse Marsh interview, not blaming the players, but sort of referencing errors. I thought the Lampard one was similar enough after the
absolutely,
the Spurs game.
I
thought there was a tone of player and
not my fault.
Yeah, it was. I was a little bit surprised, I have to say, by that. And I think obviously when Jesse Marsh sort of says that, and he's a little bit more of an outsider to the league, and there's an element of that. But I thought Lampard's was not dissimilar.
Yeah, I would agree. I listened to it, and where is the protection for the back four? And
you only listened to it because your team won 5-0.
Well, that's the only reason, absolutely, and the only reason I'll be listening to this evening's one as well. I won't be listening to anything else apart from you.
The Wayne Rooney thing is interesting though, JD. I wonder, was there any tactical element in him not taking on this job, because it added up in the sense that they're coming from a bad spell under Benitez. Rooney can get this job, and whether it was the loyalty that he referenced in terms of a job to do at Derby, he sidestepped it. And if they get relegated, Lampard is in a really bad place as a manager going forward.
Well, 1951 was the last time Everton were relegated from the top flight of English football.
Wow.
It's probably pretty gloomy on the blue side of Merseyside, isn't it, Mark?
Hopefully.
We were honesty is the best policy with these things. He could have given a cliched answer or whatever. Why not?
I don't want to see it.
Just get to the heart of it.
Yeah. We're going to take a break here. We'll talk about Shamrock Rovers and Bohemians after it, and also look ahead to Man United against Spurs and Football Saturday with Lawro, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward. We're back after this. Come back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 7 this evening, because we have Ireland and England coverage. Brent Pope will be along with Paddy Wallace to kind of be across the whole match, which kicks off at 4:45 at Twickenham. Ashley and O'Reilly's over there as well. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation. You can listen on News Talk, watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. Remember, football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Man United versus Spurs on Saturday Night Football live only on Sky Sports. Texts in here to Lawro, Johnny Ward, and Dan McDonnell. Johnny Ward questioning Lampard's credentials and fulsome in his praise of our dismal national team manager. Ironic, says one of our textures on 53106. On the other hand, having a manager who actually likes football is a nice change, says Gary in Rush. And lads, watching Brighton Liverpool earlier, see my fellow Corkman Queeveen Kelleher sitting on the bench. I thought it'd be better off on the pitch playing for Brighton instead of being on the bench as a sub for Liverpool. If you're Kelleher and Brighton or a similar club come for you in the summer, do you make the move, asks Diddy. Lawro?
No. Why would you? No, stay at Liverpool and, every day in training, come up against Salah and Diaz and Mane and Jota and all those kind of people. No, absolutely not. The only thing he's going to miss is really if he went to a championship team, maybe the battering he gets from the crosses and corners and all that kind of stuff and having to deal with that. But you could put that on in training. So, no, stay where you are.
That's Lawro's definitive view.
It's unusual. Like, he's 23, Kelleher now, I think. Certainly born in 1998 anyway. So, 24 this year. 23. Like, it is unusual, like, to have a number two like that. I mean, you have Dean Henderson, say, who has had several loans. And for someone to maybe... Like, you'd imagine... I think Kelleher isn't going to go anywhere. So, you'd imagine in 18 months' time... Like, he's going to get to, say, 25 years of age, having played, I don't know, how many appearances, maybe, 50, maybe something like that. It's unusual. Like, it is unusual. I think there will come a tipping point eventually. I don't think there's any pressure on it to come now. But, like, I think it does get to a stage where he probably does need to address it. Because a lot of the other number twos probably, they have a little bit more on their CV, you know?
Well, the only thing where I think it could possibly happen is if Adrian leaves. And to be fair, I mean, he's right at the end of his career anyway. He never was any good. So if you could get another really good number two in that you thought would, if obviously the number one goalkeeper is injured or what, and your number two then could come in, maybe they'd let him out then. But I just do not see it. I mean, Alisson very rarely misses matches anyway, but I just think you'd be better. All the stuff they do in training nowadays, you'd be better being in training and being involved all the time against world-class players.
He is playing for Liverpool as well. He's around these amazing individuals and coaches every day. Maybe he's very happy in life. Maybe he loves going to training every day. Maybe he doesn't fancy going on loan like some of the others have, or getting a move to a club that would be different pressures. And Dan says he's 23, which for a goalie, I mean, he could have the guts of 20 years left.
Well, Dino's off, won the World Cup as a captain as a 40-year-old in 1992.
And maybe the wage at the end of the week's probably helping him.
Yeah, well, he got a good 5-year deal last summer that sort of made him number two. And I think gave him certain guarantees. I know Klopp was talking about sentiment and the Carabao Cup, and clearly it was sentiment, but I also think Kelleher's deal last summer gave him some degree of, well, we are going to play you, like we are.
Okay.
We're going to.
Right.
And, it was a 5-year deal. It wasn't a 2-year deal, if you know what I mean. So there was a sort of an investment within that,
Okay. Scotland 26, Italy 10 in the Six Nations. 60 minutes on the watch. Shamrock Rovers Bohemians last night. Dan, you were there. Anything that we can take from it? A 1-0 win for Rovers?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great occasion, I have to say. Sort of a sold out sort of a couple of days.
Not on TV.
3 days. No, not on TV. And I know that's obviously a contentious one. I think there's layers to that. I think clearly there's a lot of scrutiny on RTE. I do understand, though, the point they have a Six Nations contract and you have to show the games with that. I'd be more so looking at it from the perspective of, I think between the FAI and RTE and whatever they agree a broadcast deal, I've always made this point, you can always arrange games, your premium games as such, to find a space for them in the schedule. Could you play them on a Thursday even? I don't know. I think there's certain games that should be sort of laid down, and this would be one for me. But and the next Bows Rovers derby that's coming up in Dalymount, that's not on TV either. I'm not sure if there's a clash with the Six Nations in that event, but for some reason these games haven't been shown to me. That's not very wise. But last night, I mean, as I said, it wasn't actually a classic game, to be fair. It was a game that sort of threatened to ignite without ever really doing that. Shamrock Rovers started well. Bows didn't. When Bows went behind sort of midway through the first half, I think their performance levels increased, and they had a good spell after half time, but they weren't banging the door down in the last 20 minutes either. And you do still look at Shamrock Rovers, and they start, Jack Byrne and Graham Burke, two players who've sort of played for Ireland. They're still able to bring on Richie Towell, still able to bring on this was Aaron Green, a slightly older player as well, but they were able to sort of refresh their options. And Danny Mandrew, who was in the Ireland senior squad last year, and bring these players off the bench. And I thought they managed the game and did pretty well. Must be said, Bows were missing Promise O'Mashare, who's going to be a player I think we'll be talking about across the year. He sort of replaced Georgie Kelly. He's another one of these Irish players of sort of African heritage, and he got the chance to shine. He's getting the chance to shine now that Georgie Kelly has left, and he looks exceptionally good. He got a very unfortunate red card last week that meant he was suspended, and without his physical threat and his real presence up front, Bows just didn't really. They lacked that outlet. But it was a good event, good occasion. But maybe the next meeting might have a little bit more spice in it.
Okay, Antrim 114, Longford 6 points in Division 3 of the Allianz Football League. Scotland now 33, 10 points against Italy, so 33-10 they lead in the Six Nations Ireland kick-off against England at 4:45. We're on air till 7 with Brent Pope and Paddy Wallace after the earlier football Saturday this week. 5:30 kick-off, Man United Spurs at Old Trafford. Lawro, where do you begin? Because they downed tools. The players gave up last week.
Yeah, but you know what? That's systematic of the way they played nearly all season under Ranić, which is one half good, another half not so good. But obviously they were pathetic second half. I thought they posed a threat in the first half. Most definitely scored a really, really good goal. Again, it's back to the dressing room, isn't it? So and your man Ronaldo cleared off to Portugal, didn't he?
Yeah.
What's all that about? And
it's always the hip flexor injury is always generally what's put out there. But surely he can't be there next season, because Ronaldo to me is sulking. He's been sulking for a long time. There's all these talk about the leadership, but ultimately the body's not responding to his mind. And how can a new manager go in there and have to deal with Ronaldo and all this brand stuff that's around Ronaldo?
Well, they need to clear him out before that, and I think he'll go, won't he? But the other thing is with him, there's no I in team. He's been an absolutely brilliant player. But what does that say about Ranić? Just letting him go. He'd say, no. And by the way, you're going to come to the game. You're going to sit on the bench. Obviously not available, but you still come and sit on the bench. What do all the others in the dressing room think about that? And therein lies the problem still. And we've talked about this quite a few times. Their dressing room is hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And now they've got one or two of the younger players saying, "Oh, I'm going to, I've got another year left on my contract. I'm thinking about weighing up what I should do. This is Rashford, of course. What I should do."
That was so inevitable. I could have predicted that last Sunday night, that 2 to 3 days later, you're going to get these stories all over the back pages. Exactly what happened.
So they're an absolute mess. I feel a bit sorry for Ranić, and then on occasions I don't really. They've got some really gifted players. They are just a million miles away from being a team. And it shows you when you do not have a good dressing room, you do not get good results.
Harry Maguire, was it a case that he was overrated? The presence in the England team papering over the cracks? Is it that the system doesn't work, that he's lost confidence? What is it with him as a defender? What would your insight be?
Loss of confidence. I think that's a big thing. And the problem with Harry Maguire is he doesn't have enough pace if he makes a mistake to rectify the situation. That's a big thing. How many games has Varane played? I got slaughtered at the start of the season saying that he didn't play that many in Spain. And he doesn't seem to play that many games. But you can just go through the whole team. And the individual mistakes they made for the goals. It's just, we could talk for half an hour on it, John, to be quite honest with you. And the problem is that, we said this before, Ranić goes in May. He probably goes upstairs, I would have thought, unless he goes completely. And then who's a new fella that comes in, which possibly could be Pochettino. I think he'll get them sorted, but they've got some serious surgery to be taken into that dressing room. It sounds like it's awful.
Harry Kane is also now dropping deep a bit for Spurs, and he's been playing champagne football, Lawro, he might be auditioning for a move away from North London, but he could cause them problems now this evening in the space between the back four and the midfield.
Yeah, and I presume if Son's fit, I think they go as a two, to be quite honest. I think he's a top player and doesn't get as much of the adulation as Harry Kane, but he's a real player and he's lightning quick. But listen, even them, even Tottenham, John, what did they do? They lost 4 and then they went and won at City. Is that right?
City, Leeds and Everton, they've won 3. The matches in the midweek, the games against Middlesbrough and Burnley didn't go so well.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you go to Burnley on the back of a brilliant win, and where's the performance? What's happened to the players? So that tells you something about them. I mean, it now appears that Arsenal are obviously the favourites to finish 4th. But the other thing about it is if Chelsea can't fulfil the fixtures, how does that affect everything, top and bottom?
Yeah, I think
Chelsea,
Chelsea,
they just wipe their result?
I think Chelsea will be okay. I think ultimately the British government, I don't think will want to see that happen. Arsenal play Leicester tomorrow. Just on tonight's game, Matt Doherty, lads, it's a resurgence that's probably reflective of the fact that you need to play your players in the best positions.
I'll probably let Johnny come in.
Yeah, it's strange that that game against Everton where it shows that Doherty's performances maybe kind of coinciding with Coleman's struggles or whatever. But yeah, I haven't actually seen much of Spurs lately, but I think Doherty's been terrific for Ireland. I'm glad that he's getting a run. I think he's a really dynamic, the most quintessential type of a wing back. He's a really brilliant footballer, and I think it's set in stone now who's our wing back going forward for the foreseeable, JD, for Ireland, and maybe the left back situation is going to be a bit more up for grabs. But yeah, Doherty's obviously hitting form again. He's a terrific footballer.
Do we have a good sense of, I'm trying to even think of the Ireland team because it's so rusty now the last few months. That's how we haven't played.
Well, the squad's going to be named next Friday. But I think, I'm not going back to the Stephen Kenny point, but the one thing you did say during the week is that there's going to be less experimentation going forward now. And this sort of ties in with the whole sense of, okay, you've had your holding period now, you're getting your sort of feet under the table, figuring things out. And there is going to be a sense now that there's, that maybe excuses that had a degree that were valid before won't be valid now. You know what I mean? In the sense of, I think there's going to be a more settled squad in the team. So you are going back to that 3 at the back, with the sort of the Callum Robinson up top sort of. Again, you see, the only thing is though, Adam Ida would have been a big part of that, and now he's out. Oma Bamidele was one of the success stories of the autumn, and he's now out. So in international management, you can plan ahead to a degree, but things happen, but very well stocked in centre half, between Darragh O'Shea, Shane Duffy, John Egan, Seamus Coleman possibly. I still think Coleman will still play in the right of the 3, to be honest.
Right.
Oh,
And then you have...
You think he will, Dan, yeah?
Oh yeah, I think so, yeah. I do. I think he'll play more games than he won't. I think if there's 4 games in June, which there's meant to be, although obviously the war has sort of changed the plans, I could see him playing 3 of them or 2 of them. I think he'll be minded, but I think he'll still be for a big game. I think for his experience around younger players, I still don't think he'll be dispensed with, and he might have a small bit more protection than he might have at Everton. And at the same time, he's not playing with Premier League players all the time with Ireland too. So there's all grades. I think the big thing, is going to be maybe Josh Cullen will obviously play in midfield, but it's finding that little bit of creativity in the midfield area, and someone like Jason Knight who come on and did so well in Luxembourg, for example. It's in certain games, can Ireland take a little bit more risks in terms of their selection, in terms of that area, and other games they might need to be more solid. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of a settled side as much as you can in international football over the next 6 months or so.
Scotland now 33-17 up against Italy in the Six Nations. 10 minutes to go. Ireland-England kicks off at 4:45 at Twickenham. We got a half time from the Brentford Burnley game. This is in the Premier League, a huge game at the bottom, and Mike Lawrence is this report.
Brentford 0, Burnley 0. A decent game to watch this. Both sides in need of points and making positive attempts to break the deadlock. For the home side, Brian Mbeumo, he should have scored 2 or 3 really. The best effort just before the break. A lovely ball from the left-hand side from Sergei Canos. Mbeumo was waiting at the back post. His shot booted away by the outstretched leg of Nick Pope in the Burnley goal. Christian Eriksen, he got a good shot away, which again prompted a fine one-handed save from Nick Pope midway through the half. At the other end, Max Cornet, the top scorer, back in the side today, had a half-hearted penalty appeal waved away when he tangled with Ethan Pinnock. And Josh Brownhill, he had a free kick which whistled wide of David Raya's post early on from just outside the box. Both sides struggled towards the end of the half just to hold on to the ball and build any possession, but at the break it's Brentford 0, Burnley 0.
And earlier on, Liverpool beat Brighton by 2-0. Luis Diaz and Mo Salah on the mark within 3 points of Manchester City at the top. Man United and Spurs kick off at 5:30. In the Championship it ended. The leaders Fulham 1, Barnsley 1. Half-time scores: Birmingham 0, Hull 0, half-time Blackburn 0, Bristol City 0, half-time Blackpool 1, Swansea 0, half-time Bournemouth 1, Derby 0, half-time Cardiff 0, Preston 0, half-time Coventry 1, Sheffield United 1. It is Millwall 0, Middlesbrough 0, Nottingham Forest 1, Reading 0, and Peterborough 1, Stoke 1. So call Man United Spurs this evening, Lawro?
1 each.
And Arsenal, I know I spoke a few months ago to you and you were kind of same old Arsenal, you can't trust them, but you could probably trust them now to get the top 4, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's done a fab job now. The sacking or releasing of Aubameyang was a very difficult thing to do at the time, and you can just see, we talked about Manchester United's dressing room before. I think that's improved the dressing room at Arsenal massively, and they look a good side now, a very good side, and I would think they will probably finish 4th.
And defensively, White and Gabriel seem to have, and Tierney, obviously Tierney's a good leader there.
Yeah, they've improved, haven't they? And they're playing with lots of confidence as well. They're just a different team. I think Arteta's done a really, really good job. I really seriously do, and I'm glad that Arsenal have let him do it, because they've given him a little bit of time, which everybody needs. And yeah, they look aside now, most definitely. And they're not, they don't go away and you're thinking, once he cross Watford gap, they get beaten 2-0 or whatever. And no, there's a bit of steel about them.
We got to leave it there. Lawro and Johnny, thanks so much.
Cheers, Jenny.
Thank you.
And Dan, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Best of luck at Cheltenham. And what's the nap?
Sir Gerhard's the nap. It needs something a bit bigger price than that, though. I'm trying to think.
Put you on the spot.
Don't put me on the spot. No, I like Ginto, and he's gone to the Albert Bartlett maybe. So yeah, I think maybe Ginto.
Okay. We should have asked Johnny, but we'll get Johnny's thoughts all across the week on OTB and on News Talk for Cheltenham 2022, which starts on Tuesday. Italy 17, Scotland 33 in the Six Nations. We're going to build up after 4 with Brent Pope in studio and Paddy Wallace to Ireland against England. 4:45 start at Twickenham as Ireland bid to win the Triple Crown. Looking like the championship might go to France. But we're going to build up to that and speak to Aisling O'Reilly as well at Twickenham after the news. Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk, live until 7 p.m. this evening.